Welcome to the Pro Design Builder podcast, the show where professionals and entrepreneurs share their stories, strategies, and secrets to building a thriving business and a successful life. I'm Sam, your host, as we dive deep into the world of life experiences and entrepreneurship. Before we get started, just want to thank our sponsors, the Pro Design Builder, which is a coaching consulting firm for real estate investors who want to build spec homes in new development projects. The Pro Design Builder is not just about building a business, it's about building a vision and a life by design. Also, I want to thank our sponsor, the Tampa Nest Collab, which is a real estate incubator. We have professionals in several different disciplines, whether it's creative finance, spec home building, and short sales. There's a professional in each one. So if you are a real estate investor and you're looking for a community where there are professionals that are doing deals, that would be the Nest Collab. As you know, foster care is a mission that's near and dear to my heart. I've had 5 kids through our home. I've adopted 2 kids. I'm currently fostering one, and the work in foster care is never over. If you feel ever led to give to um, our Patreon. There'll be a link in the description to give there. So some of the initiatives that it supports, we buy beds for foster families and adoptive families. We also we also provide meals as the primary cook. I know how great it is when we get a replacement meal, and I don't have to worry about all of the hustle and bustle. So those are the things that we provide. And then we also provide an additional date night. We feel strongly that the family is when the unit is strong, the family is at its best, right? And we could provide additional opportunity for the parents to connect and create a strong foundation. We feel like that will create a very strong home, right? So without further ado, Karreecha Newby is a mental health advocate, author, and also a South Florida native, which is very close to me. But she does a lot of work with mental health, and I can't wait to dive into her story and her journey. Hey, how you doing today?
Hey, Mr. Sam, I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. If you don't mind, just tell the people a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself. Okay. Um, so presently I am a full-time business owner.
Hmm.
I provide behavioral health services to childcare providers. My age group that I primarily work with is birth to 5, and we typically call that early intervention. And basically, what that is when you see it early, you say something early. So
Yeah.
that can range from developmental, behavioral, or health related disorders or disabilities. And so, my role is to educate preschool providers on the mental health and social emotional needs of children.
Hmm.
That's what I do currently from Monday through Friday as a full time business owner. The name of my business is Serve Well, and it is derivative of the scripture, Beloved, I wish above all things that as you prosper in this sense, that you prosper in every way. And so I believe that if the soul is healed, then everything else in your life will begin to heal. What's going on the inside will emanate outside. And so I am a big advocate of restoring childhoods that were like mine. I come from a family, a very young mom, 16 years old. She had me at 17, but she had already had a child already.
Oh
And so
wow.
you think about a 16-year-old, that's a baby.
Hmm.
That's a
Yeah, for
baby. And
sure, for
although we
sure.
can't control, what 16-year-olds do a lot of the time, I always ask myself, like, where were the parents?
Yeah.
Where was everybody? And so I won't spend a lot of time on that. But my work is definitely connected to my childhood in the sense that I've done a lot of healing. And so now I go back and try to restore the lives of those whose lives been impacted by trauma, to include foster children. I
Yeah.
too was a foster parent.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We have a lot of
Yeah.
connections. So this one's gonna be very good. I'm excited, right?
Okay.
Because
Me too.
yeah,
Me too.
because you are a birth to five age birth to five
Hmm.
educator for mental health children, and for me, we take in kids that are 0 to 2 typically. We'll
Mm.
take them in older too, but no, or 0 to 5. I'm not even sure. It's we take in babies
Yeah.
generally, all right,
Yeah.
and there's there's several reasons why. One, we just gravitate towards babies, but we just feel like we could imprint our the foundations and the principles that much more. But even when a baby comes into care, right, and we've seen babies straight out of the hospital, and we've seen babies straight out of or a couple months old, as long as you're on this earth, you're experiencing trauma, and these traumas will be exhibited later. I mean, this is not typically where I go, but we'll get to that. But
Okay.
how are you seeing the same thing when it comes to this pattern?
Absolutely. And that's part of the reason why I'm in early intervention. And so part of my call to the profession, not just my personal experience, but in my professional experience, we most of my experience has been in the group home setting, right?
Hmm.
We've worked with children who are wards of the state, or children who where the parents just say, you know what, I'm done parenting, there's nothing else I can do for this child.
Yeah.
So we got children from everywhere. We've gotten children who were in the system already. We've gotten children where something may have happened to the parent, whether it was drugs, domestic violence, whatever. We would bring these children into the group home. And so I've been in social services for over 25 years. I started very, very young. And so the pattern that I saw in the group home as well as in the school system is that the staff and the professionals were burning out because
Hmm.
we really did not understand the depth of the trauma that these children were presenting with.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Hmm.
so while we got training, like if I don't, if, if I don't have train, like I am trained out. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe you. Yeah.
And so we got the training to be able to meet the needs of our professional development and to be able to work with the children. But the other part is some of us had never dealt with our own traumas, right? And so we get
Correct.
children with traumas who trigger the staff. And here it is, this cyclical pattern again. And this
Hmm.
is why you're seeing a lot of trauma education on the forefront, because you have professionals going into this field who have never done their work. And
Yep.
so now we're recreating cycles for children who are already living this, they already have this turbulent internal world going on. And
Hmm.
so the thing that I saw among the preschoolers is that they were expelling the preschoolers. This was back in 2011 when I got this epiphany,
Hmm.
because we're getting burned out working with youth and young adults, but here it
Yep.
is, these preschoolers. And so I began to say, in 5 years, this 5-year-old could potentially end up in this group home.
Correct.
I decided I need to go back to do my work,
Hmm.
because this work is good, but it's costly financially,
Yep.
it's costly emotionally. And the very thing that most of us love, we were beginning to hate
Hmm.
because of the amount of stress related issues we began to experience with these children. We read the psychosocials, you know about that when you get these children.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so
Yep.
my thing would be, what happened the first 5 years? Where
Yeah.
was everybody? Where was all the interventions and all the people? And so I had the epiphany. I'm like, if I'm going to be effective, right? Because this is not just my profession. I've gone to school and been trained, but this is my
Yep.
passion.
Yep.
Sometimes
Yep.
people
Yep.
tell me, yeah, you're not at work, just turn it off. Well, when you're called to this,
Mm-hmm.
you have to prioritize your life, but there is no just turning it off.
Mm-hmm. No,
And so
I
I
get it.
decided to go back to early, and that's just kind of how all of this evolved.
I truly feel if you catch it early enough, you really give them a chance. All right, I want to share something that I shared today on Facebook. All right,
Okay.
all
Yeah.
right. So I'm gonna show you.
Okay. Will I be able to see it, or will you just read it?
I'll just read it
Okay. Awesome.
because it was impactful. Oh, hold on a second. All right, here, and this is what I wrote today, and I posted this certificate. It said, a few years ago, my daughter was being asked to leave a daycare because they just couldn't handle her anymore. Uh, if uh, if you have been there as a parent, you can understand the dread when a child is misbehaving outside of your presence. After being kicked out of one daycare, she qualified for a specialized behavior program. The next year was similar. She was throwing chairs, clearing desks, physical tantrums, and getting bad reports daily. Fast forward to last year, which was a better year for her, way more mild in her disruptions in the classroom. Now in the present, Michaela hasn't had any bad reports from her classroom teacher. She is at the top of her class in academics and excels in sports. I share this because the work is never done, and as you continue to pour into your children, they will receive from it, and they will bear fruit, good fruit, which is the same thing Christ has done for us. Right. So you it's crazy because she was 3 years old and they literally kicked her out, and this is Christian school, but they are very firm and kind of like how they function and operate. And it was it bothered me because there is this stigma, I feel like, when there's a label placed on a kid, it's hard to shake. And that was something, a conversation I had with my wife very early on. I'm like, we're not letting anybody label our kids. Like, I don't care what they say, right? We use very careful wording to make sure that we are not painting a picture that will last for a long time. We know how powerful words are, but I felt like I had to share that because when I saw that certificate, and it was like she was like the kid of the month for January, had all of these things that she checked off with her behavior, kindness, and stuff like that. I gave her a hug and kissed her. I was like, hey, listen, you're doing a really good job, right? Isn't life more fun when you have privileges? She was
Yes.
just like, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I'm like, of course, it's supposed to be. I want you to have fun. I want you to do amazing work. So, okay, so we
I
started.
hope you feel. I hope you feel proud.
I
When
am
you feel proud,
truly.
it translates into those children, and
It,
we just got to give them. They need time.
Anytime,
They need time.
anytime in a consistent environment,
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, I could see a lot of the things that we're gonna discuss and dive into. So
Yeah.
we typically like to start at the beginning. So what were you like as
Okay.
a child? What was that environment like for you? Because you talked about some of your experiences, but
Yeah.
what did that look like for you?
So I would venture to say, as early as I can remember, um, my grandmother was a staple. She was a stronghold. She was the consistent, um, that strength. That she was just consistent. Her love towards me, just her. We lots of people don't say energy or what have you, but we know energy is very real. Okay, everything she emanated towards me was consistent. I can measure my consistency, and anything that was solid, I can always measure it back to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so while she was consistent, my mother being a young mother and my father being very young was very inconsistent. Their relationship towards each other was turbulent and we experienced it. So there was a lot of domestic violence, a lot of emotional, stuff from my dad towards my mom. Um, at the age of 5, At the age of 5, my father was shot in front of me. He was
Oh,
pronounced dead there on the scene. This is a 5-year-old, right?
oh wow.
And so typically, society, a lot of times, not society as a whole, but a lot of times, just like kind of like the general population, I'm not even including the professionals because we know that
Mm-hmm.
children experience trauma. They may not show it now, but
Yep.
if you don't know what trauma looks like, then
Mm-hmm.
you would venture to say, oh, they'll be fine. Yes, this happened, but it won't bother them.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the age of 5, my father was shot in front of me. We moved a lot. Research talks about how the brain develops with consistency, responsive caregiving, things of that nature. And so there was a lot of moving back and forth. I went to almost every school in Palm Beach County.
Oh wow.
I was hit by a car at the age of 6. My best friend was murdered at the age of 6. And so we don't typically think that children can remember these things, but I remember very vividly. I remember even how my body felt. My body would shake all the time because of what they shared in front of us. My 6-year-old best friend, neighbor, was kidnapped and murdered. And so here it is. That happened to her at 6. I was hit by a car at 6. Then here I turned 7. I was almost kidnapped twice. Um, and so, having a young mom and her, lack of emotional regulation, there was a lot of yelling, emotional, neglect and sometimes abusive words. Um, In addition to that, my let's see, when I was a when I turned 15, 16, 17, between that age, um, I was I'm trying to count how many times I was held at gunpoint.
Mm.
Um, I was in an altercation with my stepfather. He pulled a gun on me, and then there was one time I was getting on a school bus. And my best friend, not my best friend, but one of the guys I went to school with, somebody pulled a gun on him. And this whole savior jumps in front of the gun. And because I've had all this trauma, I have delayed reactions. So I'm not feeling anything in the moment. But a day or two later, I might start having these panic attacks because the psychological impact, I start processing, oh my God, I was at gunpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, then my cousin's boyfriend, we got into an altercation. I used to fight a lot as a
Yep.
child.
Yep. Yep.
I used to fight a lot.
Yep.
And well, anyway, by this time, my cousin's boyfriend and I got into an altercation, and he pulled a gun on my sister first and then pulled a gun on me. He actually pulled the trigger on me and it
Oh
didn't
wow.
go off. Yeah,
Wow.
it
Wow.
didn't go
Wow.
off. Yeah, and so he kicked me in the stomach, and then I was able to gather myself and run because when it didn't go off, he left, went to get another gun, and he
Mm.
said that he was going to kill me, and so I ran out the door. And so the kind of trauma that I have experienced is complex and chronic, meaning I've experienced trauma from every angle, and it was just consistent throughout my childhood. So that's why it's called complex and chronic trauma. And so that was typically a lot of what happened, and it's complex and chronic because there was never any intervention done.
Mm. This is it's scary how relatable it is, right? Um I'll kind of like, I could probably go line by line and tell you story by story.
I
Right?
believe you.
You said hit by a car. Right? I was hit by a car by undercover police when I was like 8 years old. Right? They were going to go make a drug buy, and although it was my fault running across the street, that was a life threatening. It could have been very bad. Mhm. You said, uh, you said, almost kidnapped twice. Right? I remember this this time I was walking through this yard in my neighborhood, and in my neighborhood, people would always be outside. Like it's 100% chance that someone will be outside, right? This guy is like a gray Chevrolet. He says something to me. I turn to him, and then he he stopped and then gets out of his car, and the door's wide open, and then he starts walking towards me. And for some reason, I look up the street because there's always someone that's outside, right? And on this particular day, this still kind of makes the hair on my neck stand up. But on this particular day, there was no one outside. And then my hair like stood up. I was like, oh, and then I shot out like a cannon, and I just ran. I just ran. And then, you could hear the car. He jumped back in the car. You could hear the car, the tires screeching. I jumped the fence and hid and stuff like that. And there was another incident where um, I was just playing football with some friends, and this argument broke out, and these two guys were just in the middle of the street, and point blank range, this guy, pulled out a pistol and, pointed it at him, and then it just click. It did not go off. I was just like, wow, what am I watching right now? Right. And I didn't really put it all together. I was like, well, I think I'm a trauma baby, but you said complex, and how you describe that? Complex.
Yes, it's complex and chronic trauma.
uh
Chronic mean it's ongoing. It just
Ongoing.
kind of
Yes.
never stops. And then
Correct.
complex, it's the being cursed out, it's being hit
Yeah.
by a car, it's
Correct.
you know, vicarious trauma is watching somebody else's trauma and you be
Correct.
affected by it. So
Correct. Correct. Correct.
yeah,
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's very relatable. But what's good about this is, as we kind of peel back some of these layers and these experiences, we've had to overcome, and some of it doesn't still won't ever make sense to me. But we've had to overcome these challenges,
yeah,
to be whole, right? And similar to you, it allows you to be able to go back and help birth to five children, kind of work on these traumas that will carry into the future. And same way with me with foster kids, allows me to really connect and understand what is the recipe that's going to be needed so they could be left whole,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. So how were you able to, one, process these things, these
Mhm.
experiences, and then get to the point where you know healing from things like this?
Yeah, yeah. And so I am now able to just really, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know how many believers or Christian people who listen to this podcast, but I'm going to say this.
Hmm.
You cannot experience the level of freedom and healing
Hmm.
that you're supposed to accept. You have Jesus Christ in your life.
Amen.
You
Amen.
absolutely can't. I
Amen.
did not grow up in a church. I did not know Jesus. I did not know anything about the Bible.
Hmm.
I did not really start living my life as a Christian, a active Christian, until I was the age of 21. And actually, that was when a lot of my traumas were exacerbated
Hmm.
because I had gotten into my first relationship at 21 years old. and it was turbulent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I am someone, when I say the level of healing that I have experienced could not have happened outside of Jesus Christ,
Mm-hmm.
it was because of the Holy Spirit and things that were revealed to me personally during my personal prayer times, is how I knew what to do in terms of going to therapy, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of exploring different areas, even in therapy, that the therapist didn't even know how to tap into.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things, this is a very pivotal moment in my healing journey in 2011. Okay, I started going to therapy in 2006 by way of my physician first.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a practicing Christian. I'm doing all the right things,
Correct.
saying all the right things,
Yep.
and ended up in the doctor's office in a full blown PTSD, reactivity,
Yep.
flashbacks, weight
Mm-hmm.
gain,
Yep.
uh, night terrors, night
Mm-hmm.
sweats, all
Yep.
of that in 2006. And so my doctor says, "Are you depressed?" And I quickly said no and got up out of her office.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "I'm not depressed. I'm a Christian and I go to church,"
Oh wow.
because that's what I knew.
Yep.
And so, but I also, on the other hand, had enough sense, because I was in my master's program at the time studying psychology. I
Mm-hmm.
had enough sense to say, you know what? You better go back to that doctor and talk to her about what's going on with you.
Yep.
And so that was my first bout with any intervention. But fast forward to 2011, I was sitting in my prayer time, and I, just like you and I are talking, I asked the Lord,
Yep.
what's wrong? Something, I said, something's wrong with me. Something's not connecting. I began to go down this list with the Lord. And right there in that moment, the Holy Spirit revealed to me that the real trauma happened in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
I had never heard of trauma in utero before. This is a very real thing.
Mm-hmm.
It happens with a lot of children, even children who were born in typically loving families. You know, you said something very important earlier, that as long as we live in this earth, we're all going to experience trauma.
Correct.
But everybody's degree of trauma is different.
Correct.
And so the most impactful and detrimental thing for me happened in the womb. And so once the Lord revealed that to me, it took me 3 days to go and talk to my mom, because now I'm studying psychology and I'm
Mm-hmm.
learning some stuff. And I'm like, okay, she is nowhere near addressing her stuff, because why?
Uh,
I'm estranged. I don't even really have a relationship with her at the time.
mm-hmm.
And so 3 days passed by. I talked to my mom and I asked her, hey, I've been praying about something. This is what the Lord revealed. Can you tell me what happened? So basically, the Lord revealed to me that a lot of my deep seated stuff is rejection.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, the Lord showed me how rejection entered the womb. And so once I got the revelation, I was talking to my mom about it. And I said, when you found out you were pregnant with me, you didn't want me, did you? And she just got quiet.
Mm.
And she said, no, and this is why. She was 16.
Yeah, but
In that moment of all these years, I had resented my mom for not being able to love me and care for me. Compassion filled my heart
mm-hmm.
like I had never felt it before. I had never felt that kind of love and compassion towards anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that moment, I was able to fully forgive my mom. Now, the memories are still there. Every now and then, the memories will come up, and I have to work through that stuff.
Yep.
But at the core of who I am, I have forgiven my mom for some of the most detrimental things that happened to me while I was under her care.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why I say that I don't honestly believe that you can really heal outside of Jesus Christ, because there are things that the Holy Spirit will reveal that the best traumatologists see. I work with them all. I work with the
Yeah.
traumatologist. I've been called an anomaly,
Yeah.
but
Well,
I'm God's anomaly.
yeah. No, it makes sense. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously I do a lot of trauma based training
Yeah.
myself as a foster parent, and I'll share I'll share one thing with you.
Yeah.
That's
Share.
why I know, the trauma starts in the womb. But
Yeah.
anyways, I was doing this training, and it talked about attachment styles in
Yep.
babies, right? So it showed that, how what does a healthy attachment style look like with the mother and a baby, right? And then what does it look like if they are it's a strained relationship, or what if there was a confused baby,
Anxious,
and
ambivalent.
it and I'm watching this kid operate, right? And I looked at it, and then it dawned on me for the first time. I was like, baby, that's me. I have a confused attachment style, right? Because the person that, which is my mom, she was an amazing woman, but she was the disciplinarian. That the one that was supposed to be comforting me was one of my primary sources of this energy exchange, which wasn't good to me. So I couldn't like come to her for any level of comfort. So my attachment style since I was a baby was very disorganized, right? And also too, there's an element too that for a small part of my childhood, my mom was in the U.S. Working, so I wasn't being, raised or nurtured by her too. So there's a gap in that attachment as well, that I don't fully know how that affects me, but we know it all affects you, right? So when I saw that was like around the time that I was like, baby, I gotta go get some work done. I gotta go look at all of these elements and figure out how all of these things fit, because I want to be the best version of myself, you know. So anyway, uh, who had the biggest influence on you growing up? Who would you say had the biggest influence on
Yeah, again, it was my grandmother. And so it was funny that you brought up attachment styles, because I do a lot of, not a lot, but I do some attachment stuff with people,
you? Hmm.
especially when I look at people who are not, they have the credentials, they have the intelligence, they have everything in place. And I used to do this before I even understood attachment and a lot of trauma stuff. And so when I see people who are not thriving the way that they should, the first thing I go to, who's in your life?
Yep.
Where's the stability? Where's the people who undergird you? Where's the people who really know you beyond your professional, you know, acumen and all of that stuff? And so I
Hmm.
can typically tell why a person isn't thriving the way that they should. And it's because of relationships, it's because of
Yeah.
attachment. We live in this world, especially as Christian people. We typically think that, yes, we can pray about something, it's going to happen, and it will. But guess what? It's going to come through a person. And if you
Hmm.
have people issues,
Yep.
you're going to have problems.
Yep. Yep.
You're going
Yep.
to have a
Yep.
lot
Yep.
of problems. And so, my grandmother, speaking of attachment style, she was my secure base. And
Hmm.
so, in terms of attachment, typically I present with avoidant.
Hmm.
I am avoidant. However, as you heal, you can oscillate attachment styles.
Hmm.
So when a person is stable, they're typically true to their word, not perfect. Because, see, I have learned to navigate that kind of stuff.
Yep.
I typically show up different because environment plays a big part in how we relate. All of this is also healing that codependency stuff too, because see, people have to know trauma is complex and it is
Hmm.
tricky. I always say that trauma is tricky. And so when I was dating, I dated a guy who also had trauma issues but would never admit it,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Hmm.
He was Sudanese. He was
Mm-hmm.
from Africa. He was one of the lost kids. And now here's a lost girl dating a lost boy.
Yeah, y'all got a
We're
lot of
trying to
lost
figure
problems.
out life. And so
Yeah, y'all got some
he,
problems. Yeah.
yeah. And so here it is. You're with an anxious. Now, like I said, you oscillate.
Mm-hmm.
So he is avoidant, and I became anxious. That
Mm,
is a recipe for a bad recipe.
yeah.
So what that looked like is the more I wanted affection from him because he was afraid of affection, what did he do? Work more,
Pulled
ran
away.
away
Yeah.
more. He became even more avoidant. So that
Mm,
didn't work.
no. No,
And
for sure.
so on my job, right? A lot of people who have had the kind of trauma experiences like we have, right? We thrive in our professional environment. Why?
Yeah.
Because we compensate. We
Mm-hmm.
learn to find things we're really good at and we just excel.
Exactly.
Whereas I was not as well with social emotional. And so I never really developed in that area. And so
Mm-hmm.
here it is. I get dropped smack dab in the middle of foster care
Mm-hmm.
where I have to learn what? Social skills.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
guess what I'm teaching the kids? Social
Social
skills.
skills. Yeah,
So
exactly.
some healing won't come expeditiously. Some healing is going to happen as you go through life, as you're also teaching people about life. It's like, wait, I didn't get this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
used to be resentful towards God. I would say,
Mm-hmm.
how could you? How
Yeah.
could you put me with children to mother them? And I've never been mother.
Yeah.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
this is how all things work together for the good of them that loves God.
Yeah.
He knows how to cultivate in you what you need and also what other people need, right? Because a
Mm-hmm.
big part of our process is that we learn how to reparent ourselves.
Yep. No, you brought up several good things, right? And you talked about this relationship that you were, one person was avoidant and the other person was something else. And what I want people to take away from this is you got to pay attention to these cues because these things happen in relationships all the
Ooh,
time, and you're
that's
not
where it
really
comes out. That's where
you're
the stuff
that's where
come
it comes
out.
out the most, right? And this is where I'm gonna touch on it, right? So I remember dating two girls, and uh
Uh-oh.
not at the same time. Yeah,
Okay.
just two different ones, but one emulated. I realized one emulated was a strong. I was opposite, right? She was very strong and dominant, and then I was more super passive and easygoing. But then I would get triggered, when if she tried to really control me. I would get triggered. But then I made the correlation later that was like my mom relationship, that I, for some reason was attracted to. But people do this all the time. You're attracted to this particular relationship. So then that was one. And then there was another one after that she she just had my number. She just knew exactly how to trigger me, you know. And I would just fall. I would fall for the bait every single time, right? And I took notes on certain things because I used to be a one upper or keep score and stuff like that. And then I like took notes afterwards, and I was just kind of like, I know I don't need these types for me. Like I need the right one for me. And my wife is definitely the right one for me. My energy is just so balanced. And I'm so safe. I'm so cared for and not triggered. It's amazing. But you see people all the time forcing these relationships that the fit is not the right fit, is not the right fit, right? And you could know that it's not the right fit. And I do marriage coaching, so I see the not the right fit. and but they'll go for it anyway, right? Instead of looking for the fit that doesn't that makes the most sense.
Yeah, yeah, yes. That I love that. I love the fact that you were able to make that correlation and you know,
Yeah,
we've got to find the right fit
you
just to
got
do life, period.
you
Like,
do you
we
do you
can't
do.
just be out here swimming upstream forever. You're going to burn out and get
Yeah,
exhausted. And it's okay to love who makes you feel safe. It's okay
correct.
to do life with
Yeah.
people who make you feel safe. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have to have these toxic relationships. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, in the community that I grew up in, people just chose people, and I think it has a lot to do with abandonment, just
Yeah.
period, in my generation. And we don't have to do that, but nobody was really ever taught. And so I
Correct.
did what I saw. I have
Mm-hmm.
7 years of experience being with my father.
Mm-hmm.
I was with my father for 7 years and absolutely despised him. Had didn't
Yeah.
really want much to even do with him. Love him,
Mm-hmm.
but he's just never been there. And when he was there, life was chaotic and turbulent.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so I dated my father on and off
Correct.
for 7 years.
Correct. Correct.
And
Correct.
when I came to the realization, I was disgusted.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that in the most respectful and loving way that I absolutely can.
Yeah.
And I got out of that relationship.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. I'm proud. I'm proud of you. I'll share one more thing, right? Which was, this is gonna sound crazy, but this is how trauma works, right? And I made this realization later. So, I'm dating my wife, and at one point, I it just things were going so well, and it was so easy to be with her. It didn't feel real. Yeah, I'm being honest. It did not feel real. I called one of my friends and I told him, I said, hey brother, I was like, man, I think I'm gonna break it off with Cindy. And he goes, yeah, he goes, what's going on, right? And he's a friend. He's actually a believer, so I really kind of valued kind of his perspective, right? And I go, bro, we don't fight, we don't have issues like that. This feels fake to me, and I don't think it's real. And then he was like, huh? He goes, Sam, some people would pray for that issue, right? Some people would pray for what you got right now. And then it was like it hit me right then and there. I was like, maybe I've been looking at this wrong, right? But the relationships I seen, it's normal to have quarrels. It's normal for them to fight. It's normal for them to, to go at each other, right? So my normal was just very different than the normal I was experiencing. And I make sure that I share that story because someone might be able to relate to that perspective, that you could be exhibiting this trauma and you don't even know it. And that's kind of how it came up. But luckily, I have a great friend that helped me catch that before I made a disastrous decision. Crazy, right?
Profound.
Yeah.
I'm just excited, and I'm also cheering you on because, unless you have walked in our shoes, you won't really understand.
Yeah,
This
for
is
sure.
another reason why I'm very careful of, telling people they need to just get over it,
Correct.
or
Correct, correct, correct.
you need to just heal, because we truly don't know. We haven't even touched on all the generational and
Oh,
transgenerational trauma. You know what I'm
for sure.
saying?
For sure. Yep,
Which,
yep.
a book that I have a couple books, but one in particular is um The Body Keeps the Score
Body keeps the score. I
by
have it on my
Vander
shelf.
Kolk.
Yep.
Listen,
Mm-hmm.
listen, just like diabetes and all that other stuff is locked in the cells, because
Mm-hmm.
the cells carry all the information.
Correct.
The trauma is in the cells.
Yep.
And so, going back to what I was telling you about, there's no way you can heal without Jesus Christ. And when I say Jesus Christ, I'm talking about the Jesus that's in other people, like your friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
saying?
Yep.
When he's
Yep. Yep.
saying, bro, everybody will want that. Who,
Mm-hmm.
what? Are
Yeah.
you
What are
are
you
you
talking
about
about?
to are
You
you
are
are you
crazy.
if you would have called me, I would have been like, bye
Yeah.
Sam.
Let's
I
slap
wouldn't
him.
even talk to you.
Yeah.
I would have been like, bye. I would have been like,
Yeah. Like, what are you
you
talking about? Yeah.
but that's the life of the person who has lived in turbulence. We don't know anything outside of the manufactured
Mm-hmm.
chaos.
Yep.
Sometimes we manufacture the stuff ourselves, and it's like, whoo,
Mm-hmm.
just making sure I'm safe. When
Mm-hmm.
it's like that is the most dysfunctional, toxic thing you could ever do, but you
Yeah.
don't know any better.
You don't. Yeah. And it's I can talk about it now because I speak about this in front of other, foster
Yes,
families, right? Because I have to give that perspective because they don't have my perspective. And I talk about this is their version of normal, right?
yes,
And it don't fully make sense to you, their version of normal, because it's not going to be your normal, right? And there's a lot of times where we do life with a bunch of foster families. Sometimes they might be talking and be like, I don't understand why this mom just can't get this self together this way and stuff like that. And I go, hey, their normal is very different from your normal, right? They're operating very normally with what you're seeing right here. And you got to kind of understand and take a step back and zoom out a little bit and know that they haven't worked on themselves, right? So this is a different version of normal that we're living now. So, I just thought I'd share some of that. So,
yeah, and it's all about finding your new normal. And as you
mhm.
evolve and heal even more, you're going to be like, what in the world?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's so many rabbit holes we could go down. So I don't I don't want to make this about about myself. Was there a defining moment in your life that shaped you?
You know, I've had many, but I'm going to tell
Hmm.
you about the most recent one
Hmm.
in November. So I birthed this book in August. I don't know if you can see it. Anyway, I
Yeah.
birthed this mine in August.
Hmm.
And while I'm trying to birth that one, I'm also birthing this one,
Hmm.
right? Karreecha Wright. All right. And so for the last 8 months, I've been on this journey of talking about the trauma, talking about what that looked like in my life, talking about how it hindered me, right? This mind is taken from the scripture, let this mind be in you that's also in Christ Jesus. Well, we know that if you've experienced a lot of trauma,
Correct.
we deal with a lot of uncertainty. And so if I
Hmm.
can't see you, Jesus, it's going to be hard for me to let
Hmm.
this mind be in me because I can't see you, right?
Yeah.
This second book was birthed as a result of something that I teach religiously, and that's rest, right?
Mm.
For me, rest is like a whole other level of trusting God. We say trust God, trust God, trust God, yes. But when we truly have to lean into that trust, you can't go in anxious. You can't go in full of anxiety. You've
Yep.
got to go in knowing, like, okay, I surrender, I give it up. There's nothing I can do about this. Whatever it is, it's just really trusting God. And so I talk a lot about sabbaticals, rest, and the need for that, and the need to be able to function as a faith-based Christian believer, business owner. Like, we should not be striving every day of our lives.
Hmm.
And so this defining moment came last year in November when I was on a 30-day sabbatical and I began to have flashbacks,
Oh
right?
wow. Hmm.
We know that with trauma, you can have those delayed reactions with things. And so I talk about triggers also because we typically associate triggers with something negative. Well, I was having these pleasant experiences from my
Hmm.
childhood, and I began to say, well, why am I having these flashbacks? Why am I having these thoughts and all of this? And so the Lord began to help me to understand purpose,
Mm.
right? With the trauma, we can get so caught off guard and so caught up in all the stuff that happened that we forget all that purpose and all that good stuff that was
Hmm.
also lying there, some dormant, some active. And so as a
For sure.
child, I learned to read very early.
Hmm.
We're still talking about this defining moment, right?
Yep.
And because while I'm still walking through my healing, the Lord doesn't want me to forget purpose. Yes, we're doing all this work, but you still need to be flowing and functioning in purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the reels that were coming up was my early years where I learned to, 'cause these are things that I forgot, all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff that I forgot. And so I'm having these memories about reading early, writing early, learning to love teaching early. And the Lord began to reveal it's because that is what I called you to do. I called you to write. I called you to record my thoughts. I called you to convey my message through your writing, through your speaking, through your teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember during that time he revealed something to me that I was like, huh. I called my mom and I said, "Do you remember blah 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 blah?" She was like, "Yeah." She said, "Everything you learned in school, you came home and you taught your sisters." Like
Mm-hmm.
all of that. And so what the Lord was sharing with me, this is still about healing. This is
Mm-hmm.
why it's also so important that we forgive, because forgiveness unlocks
It
stuff.
does. It does.
Unforgiveness
Mm-hmm.
is like cheese, it will keep you compacted,
Correct.
nothing can flow.
Yep.
And so the more I healed, the more I forgave, the more I was able to flow and produce and do those things that the Lord what naturally created me to do. And so
Correct.
now the gifts and all the things he's given us, they can flow and flow freely and they're not tainted. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
can express them with love and with compassion and let people truly know, you know, if you could find a place to just daily rest with God,
Mm-hmm.
he reveals things about himself and he revealed things about you that you don't even realize that, you know, that's you. And so this is why I was getting ready to say this early when you asked me, where am I?
Yeah.
I am well.
Mm-hmm.
I am
Good.
well. I
Good.
mean that in every sense.
Good.
I'm
That's
well
great.
in my soul. I am well in my body. I am well in my spirit. I
Mm-hmm.
am truly well. Now, do I still get triggered sometime and
Of
stuff come
course.
up?
Mm-hmm.
I do. But guess what? I have tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Just
I
like
know.
any other person who's never had trauma.
Yep.
They're resilient. They know how to deal with life. And so
Mm-hmm.
here am I now, stuff can come up where in the past 10 years ago, I would flee, fight,
Mm-hmm.
fawn, freeze, all the the
Mm-hmm.
things you do when you get traumatized.
Yeah, no,
And
I
so
agree.
sometimes I might still freeze, but then because
Yeah.
I have tools, one is awareness. You talked about that a little bit. I'm aware of how things affect me. So
Mm-hmm.
now I know, oh, I've just got triggered. Let me take a step back and see how I need to navigate this. And so again, I've had a recent defining moment. And this is what I tell people: trauma is not who you are.
Mm-mm. It's not.
Trauma is what you've experienced, but it
Correct.
doesn't define you unless you let it.
Correct.
And so there is so much life on the other side. But I personally, everybody may not agree. I personally believe you cannot have a level of healing without Jesus Christ.
No, I completely agree. And for me, I was young. I was like 7 or 8 years old. I think I might have been. Yeah, I think I was 7 or 8. And I was at a vacation Bible school, and all of these things were happening, and a whole lot of the things happened after that. But that's when I decided to give my life to God, and
Mm,
that's when He revealed Himself to me, and then that was the only source of peace that I had. Right, I could
I can't wait to
literally,
get you on my podcast to talk
yeah.
about your experience.
No, exactly. That was the only source of peace I had, and I wouldn't say I was safe because I wasn't, but I was safe there in that relationship, in that environment, when I would close my eyes and I would pray, and thank God for my parents. They were just, like my parents were warriors,
Yes, come on, say it.
prayer
Prayer
warriors.
warriors. Yes,
they
yes.
were they were Sundays. Wednesdays, Fridays, sometimes Saturdays, they would host Bible study, at their house. So every night, in the same pattern that we've created with our kids, that we're constantly, praying at night for them. And there's definitely power in that ability to do that. So, I was able to kind of see it mimicked, in my house. It was just the issue is once I stepped out of the house, it was a completely different thing, right? A completely different environment than the one that I had with him and with, inside my house with my parents, right? And just kind of navigating that. So you said something, you would freeze or fight or a bunch of or flee,
Uh-huh.
for me.
On. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I was a fight or fight type of guy,
Yeah,
right?
that was me.
Because I realized freezing and fleeing actually did me no good,
Yeah.
because it would actually bring on more problems, for you. And I'll tell you this story. And I just told this story recently. I was in the third grade and I walked into this bathroom and two kids walked in behind me and they just started jumping me for no
Mm.
reason, right? And I'm trying to I'm slipping, I'm trying to do whatever I can. And then they grabbed me and at the end they slid me and I hit my head in the back of the, hit the back of my head with, on this drain pipe. And then I remember sitting there and I was crying, my knees tucked up against my chest, and I was just crying. And I was like, why me? Why me? Why me? Why does this keep happening? Why am I getting attacked for no reason and stuff like that? And then, it was then that I realized that, fear didn't do me any good. Right. So
Mm.
anytime anybody had anything to say to me, I'm gonna get started first, right? And then when I started operating like that, I started winning, right? But I didn't realize until I was an adult, like a very mature adult, that I carried this into my adulthood and then into my adult relationships. I might jump out ahead of something. If I see it going somewhere, I might go ahead and just jump out ahead, right? And or that my tone might, be a little bit more aggressive than anything else, right? And because we talk a lot, we're talking a lot about traumas. The thing is with trauma, only you can see it. No one else can see these experiences that you've had, right? So they don't understand that you've seen something happen or could escalate to a point where it don't make any sense, right? But
Yeah.
for you, the body keeps the score. It is very real. You know what could potentially happen, right? So my reactions are completely normal to my experiences, right?
Yeah.
But abnormal to a lot of other people around me, right? And because I caught that and now I don't have these things, I can speak about it very openly because I'm very
Yeah.
secure in who I am and who God has helped me to become, right? But
Yeah.
I can speak about it from a place of experience to help others. So
And then, I'm just looking at that and seeing the parallel, and to even think about your secure base at home, this loving wife the Lord has given you, and this purpose that you're doing every day. Like, purpose is such a big part of the healing tool.
yeah,
Um, because I know with a lot of people, as well as myself, we have dealt with so much uncertainty, and so purpose gave me some stability.
mm-hmm.
Like, this is what I'm called to do.
Yeah,
If I never ever grace another platform,
mm-hmm.
the fact that I'm out here helping children heal
Yep,
is
yep, yep,
enough for me. And I'm
yep,
okay. If I never write another book, if I never speak on another stage, if you never plaster my face on another flyer,
yeah,
I am fulfilled when I
yeah,
know that somebody is okay.
yeah, for sure.
Whether that, because the reality is, I work with a lot of adult children
Correct.
who I am helping them to reclaim their childhoods.
Correct.
There is no more getting over it. There
Yep.
is no more just get over it. You know what I'm saying? We got to
Mm-hmm.
start asking people what happened.
Yeah,
Who did
exactly.
it?
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
forgive them so we can move on.
Yep. I agree. I completely agree with you. Yeah, there's so many nuggets here today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I'm
Yeah.
telling you, I am most proud of these books. This one,
Uh-huh.
I didn't even see. This is the thing.
Uh-huh.
We have to be mindful and aware of this relationship with God and what He's asking us to do, because I didn't know I was carrying that book. I had
Mm-hmm.
no idea it was there.
Yeah.
And here it is. I get to birth the very thing that I'm teaching people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about, what you do and how
Yeah.
helpful it is, right? It's
Yeah.
allowed me to kind of really kind of, open up a lot that, that I'm comfortable with now. And reality is, living it was far harder than talking
Yes.
about it.
Oh,
Right.
come on, talk
But
about it.
yeah, exactly.
Ooh, come
Now I'm free.
on.
I'm free as a bird right now.
I was bullied.
I'm free.
Yes.
Exactly. I'm free to
Yes.
talk about it. It was not fun. But
Oh, let me write that down,
go
because
ahead.
that's the title of your podcast. I'm free to talk about it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yes,
Thank you,
I'm free.
sir.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. So, all right. So you you get older and you had these realizations. You saw the physician, and then what happened? How did you start to put the pieces together for yourself?
Yeah, so all of that happened in 2006 as a result of me getting laid off from work, because again, here we are. Most people with a lot of our issues, we thrive in the
Mm-hmm.
business sector, we thrive in the workplace because we've learned to compensate. And so
Yep.
when you take that one secure base from me, that self-actualization according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Mm-hmm.
I plummet. Because why? I didn't have those early years stability. I didn't have
Stability.
the
Yeah.
security. I didn't have the belonging. I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff that typically you grow and you develop in. You know what I'm saying? So when I would go through things, I didn't reach out to anybody because I always felt like I never had anybody.
Correct.
So I grew up
Correct.
with a lot of stress related issues,
Mm-hmm.
headaches, depression, anxiety, all
Yeah.
of that stuff as a result of not having an outlet. That's why
Mm-hmm.
I am big on who's in your corner,
Yep.
who's
Yeah.
undergirding you, who's praying for you, who can
Correct.
you call and talk to. And
Correct.
so I ended up in therapy in 2006, and that was where I got my first diagnosis, PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it took me a while to find the right treatment modalities
Mm-hmm.
because of my complex and chronic trauma. I would go in presenting with depression, then they try to treat depression when in
Mm-hmm.
fact I have, trauma,
Yeah.
unresolved trauma issues.
Unresolved. Right.
And so in the past 7 years, I have walked with pretty much the same therapist.
Mm-hmm.
He is a man of the cloth.
Mm-hmm.
When I was searching and researching my therapist, I was very specific about what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
However, I did not realize how much I needed a male.
Oh, okay.
And so
Mm.
while I did not tell him he was like a father,
Uh-huh.
God is just amazing, because at every transition, he could tell when I was mastering certain things in my therapy sessions too.
Yep.
And so, um, this is somebody who prayed for me in therapy during my sessions, who spoke over me, who spoke words of affirmation. When I was down, he built me up,
Mm-hmm.
because that is the role of a father, to speak to your identity.
Correct.
Fathers give, even in the natural, fathers give children their identity. Why? Because they carry the X and Y chromosome.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the same way spiritually. Like if I'm gonna birth you, then I need to be the one to do all of that. And so
Yep.
I tell you, God was amazing in how he set that up. Because He would touch places that nobody could get to.
Mm-hmm.
And even there were times in our therapy sessions, he would just stop and he would say, "Hold up, Jesus, I invite you into this space with us." And
Oh.
I would just boo-hoo cry. I would boo-hoo cry because I'm
Because
saying,
that's what you needed at that time.
you
Yeah,
are
exactly.
loving me.
Yeah.
I saw
No, I
God.
could hear it. I could hear it. Yeah,
I
it makes
saw
sense.
God through this man, and I would say, God, you are loving me back to life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He would say, Jesus, I invite you into this space
Mm-hmm.
to come and love on your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't
Mm-hmm. No,
want to
I
know
agree. I agree. No, it makes sense.
not just a God, but God's people who
Mm-hmm.
carry his breath, his presence, his eternity,
Mm-hmm.
and can impart that to you? And so when I met him 7 years ago, my healing accelerated.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes
And
sense.
so the book, the business, all of that is a result of the healing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know all of that was there,
Yeah.
but I accepted the invitation to heal because it
Mm-hmm.
was an invite. Yeah, I didn't have to. I could have still been out there toiling and doing all the stuff.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm tired of being
I'm
in this.
tired.
this.
Yeah, yeah. This sounds like a similar conversation that I had with myself. I said I'm tired of these experiences robbing me, right? Because they rob you once the first time it happened, and then they continue to rob you each and every day or each and every month or each and every situation. And I literally said that I'm tired. I'm tired of isolating myself from people. I'm tired of,
Yes.
not communicating my story. I'm tired of being, misunderstood. Right.
Mm,
But when you hear all of these things, you're like, well, you got a lot going on.
yeah. Yeah.
He's lived a lot of life, right? A lot of experience.
Yeah.
But it gives me perspective, right?
Yes.
It gives me
Yes.
perspective, which is
Yes.
fantastic.
This is why I love, you know, 10 years ago, I could never say this, but the very thing that Christ died for
Mm-hmm.
was us,
Yeah.
us and our relationships. He talks about it in John 17. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is why I'm big on relationships, where he says, Father, make them one as we are one. Why? Because that is our greatest weapon.
Yeah.
I don't care how many ninja moves you can pull.
Mm-hmm.
When you get down and out, you better have somebody in your corner.
Yeah, for sure. No,
You
for
need people who know you outside of Design Builder, the
sure. Mm-hmm.
podcast, like your wife.
Yeah,
You
for
know what I'm
sure.
saying? People who can
Yeah.
speak that life and say, hold up, this is not who you are.
Yep, yep, yep. I agree.
Yes, sir.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, for sure. So now let's transition a little bit, because this
Okay.
is business, but
Okay.
tell me about your entrepreneurship journey. Tell me a little bit about that.
Man, it's been, this is my, this year. Wait, what's today's day?
To, to the
Okay,
23rd
so
or
I
something.
launched my business in 2018 as
Uh-huh.
just kind of like a testing the market and all of that kind of stuff. So I didn't
Hmm.
go full time until 2021. And I had enough wherewithal where I knew I needed to sit with some financial people, some
Hmm.
business people to kind of help me make the transition.
Yep.
What I did not anticipate was the mental part.
Hmm.
You got to have some grit. You got
Yes.
to have some gumption. You got to have some get up and get out there about yourself. You can't just be
Correct.
out there
Correct.
like,
Yeah.
everybody's going to call me and I'm just going to get all this business. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Exactly. Exactly.
This has been my biggest battle.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
When
I
you're
agree with
not
you.
bringing an income every day and you're like,
Hmm.
I'm a woman, an adult, I'm used to having a job, I've
Hmm.
always had a great job making great money. And I'm like, hold up, you mean to tell me I don't get paid today?
Yeah. Exactly. That
So
barrier
yeah,
is always very challenging. Yeah.
yeah. So my entrepreneurship journey has been more of a discovery about myself. And one of the
Hmm.
things I discovered is how much we grew up in abject poverty. We grew
Yeah.
up, I don't know if I want to say abject poverty, but
Yeah.
we grew up in poverty where we benefited from a lot of government
Hmm.
assistance, food stamps, all of that stuff. In
Yeah.
addition to all the frequent moving and changing,
Hmm.
schools and all of that kind of stuff. And so all of that affected me, and that's a whole other layer of healing I had to do.
It is. It is.
And
Yeah.
so part of my strategy was to speak life every day. I
Mm-hmm.
overcome, I overcome. And to surround myself with mentors and people who are already in business. And so this is my fourth year in business, and I am proud to say
Mm-hmm.
that I am in a different place. I just did a virtual learning series last Saturday entitled The Mandate, the Mantle, and the Mindset of the CEO. And we're
Mm.
talking about just what the CEO embodies spiritually,
Yep.
mentally, and physically, and
Yep. Yep.
what
Yep.
God requires of CEOs and business owners,
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So you can have all the business savvy and all of that, but He wants us to operate in integrity.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be
Correct.
integral. And so my journey, all I see is good happening. Everything is up from here.
Mm-hmm.
I've grown a lot in 4 years, and I am proud to say I'm a CEO. I'm proud to say I'm a business owner. Whereas at the beginning, I was like, y'all hiring? 'Cause
No,
I don't know if I can.
I get it. It's a challenge.
Yes,
Business is a
yes,
challenge, and I've had a roller coaster ride, and when it comes to business, I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I've stopped, started, and
yeah,
restarted and regained, and actually, now I'm taking ground in a way where
yes,
I'm coaching and consulting and investing in people, which is
yes.
what I do naturally because I am investing in my kids and my family, on a regular basis. And now I'm just kind of just redirecting these gifts that God has given me that I haven't really used. And
Yeah.
and this is what has kind of come about it with this podcast, right? Is
So,
because
so
go ahead.
stick a pin because I gotta ask you this before this escapes. Because
Go ahead, go for it.
I'm looking at your logo, the
Uh-huh.
Pro Design Builder. And I'm
Yes.
like, this dude has no idea how parallel this is. And I don't know, maybe you do, and I may be speaking out of turn. I'm like, this dude think he's building buildings. He's building people. Are you serious right
Everything. No, no, no.
now?
I know.
Is that kind of like the
It is.
whole
It
okay, because
is. It is.
I've been trying to withhold myself, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
dude, what are you dude, you building people.
Yeah,
Are
we,
you
we we
serious
building
right now?
businesses, but we're also building people for
Let me high
sure.
five you on
Yes.
that.
You
Listen,
got it. No, no, no. You
listen.
got it spot on for sure. So that's what the podcast is about really. It's building people, building
I
business,
knew
building
it. I
entrepreneurs.
knew it. I knew it.
So yes, all of the
I
above. So
love it. Man,
mhm,
that's awesome.
yeah. So before we go,
Okay.
one question I always ask everybody. So what is your best lessons learned from life and in business?
No matter where you go on God's green earth, you're going to need people.
Hmm.
That is it. When you have unresolved trauma, you do yourself a disservice. We tend to think trauma is all about all the crises kind of stuff because we can experience trauma and betrayal with people too.
Yep.
God can rebuild the heart in such a way where you just love people. You move in discernment,
Yep.
but even when you've been betrayed and people have hurt you, you learn to forgive people and just say forgive them because they don't know. They don't.
Hmm.
Sometimes people just don't know better.
I
Our
agree.
judgments say they ought to,
Hmm.
but even if they do know better and they still do wrong, they don't know any better.
Yeah.
So that is my biggest lesson is that wherever we go on God's green earth, we will need people. Show up as your best, truest self, even if
Mm.
you are not where I am, even if you are not where you want to be okay with where you are and work towards where you need to be. But at the end of the day, you need somebody in your corner. We need people. God is flowing through people.
For sure.
So that is my
No.
biggest lesson.
No, for sure. That's amazing. One more time, if you when you get a chance, share your books. I know you have a
Yes, yes,
couple books to
yes. I
share.
have
What's the titles again?
this mind, this
Okay.
mind, and this is my journey through unresolved trauma. And then
Mm-hmm.
this one is Karreecha Right, which is a
Yeah.
direct result of walking through this journey of trauma. I have a third book also. It's
Okay.
called The Call: Conversations and Encounters with God. And it's where I learned to hear the voice of God through
Mm-hmm.
journaling.
Yeah,
And
for
so I
sure.
teach journaling. I coach people in journaling. Look at us coaches.
Exactly.
Look,
So we talked about doing something, doing an event,
yes.
together.
Oh,
So
you're
I
on it.
definitely, yeah, exactly.
Listen,
So we'll
stay
definitely,
tuned, brother. I
yeah,
got you.
we'll definitely do that. So I just wanted to thank you, and I appreciate you sharing your story that allows for a lot of open conversation about
Yeah.
very challenging conversations or very challenging topics,
Yes.
which allows the doorway to be open in our church to talk about for the one, right? So
Mm.
I'm willing to have whatever conversation I need to have for the one, right?
Oh,
So whatever it could relate to, I'm willing to have that conversation, and I'm lucky that I was able to be so open and express myself with you. So just
yes,
wanted to say
yes.
thank you for
I
that.
love it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
for sure.
you. Stay
So
on the journey.
no, I am. So
Yeah.
just want to say thank you for that. Thank you for tuning in, and then catch us next episode, or we want to talk about more life stuff. So have a good day.
Yes, you too.